Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Ryden. There's an old country song recorded by Charlie Rich, Behind Closed Doors, that sung of a happy relationship that was even happier when no one else was around behind closed doors. But too often, as was the case with our guest today, the image of a happy marriage is anything but behind closed doors. Pamela Telford has written a raw, honest memoir called The Big Dark that will serve as a reminder that if you see yourself on these pages, you are not alone. Welcome, Pamela. Great to have you with us today.
Thank, thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. Thank
Now,
you.
you write about a long term relationship that wasn't what it seemed to be. Tell us about that relationship and what inspired you to write about it.
Well, I was married for over 30 years to a pilot in the a fighter pilot in the Marine Corps, and it starts out like any relationship. You think it's going along just fine until you get into it emotionally attached, and you start seeing a darker side of them, and you can't make heads or tails of why they are the way they are. And I kept making excuses for him. It's the stress of his job. It's the
Mm.
stress of flying. And as the years went on, I realized it was much more than that what I was going through, this abuse that I had gone through. And by then it was hard to get out. It was really hard to get out. When you've got three little ones, and you don't, it's going to take a lot of money and it takes a lot of courage and, being afraid and all of that. So as I eventually escaped, I escaped 11 years ago from this abusive relationship. And, was thought my life was going along just fine. I'd started, put distance between me and my abuser and started a new life, a new career, a new love. And it was about 2 years ago. So 9 years after I escaped, I started having these traumatic dreams that just totally brought me down to the deepest core that I had. And things just started triggering me. Little things would be television commercials. It could be conversations with people, even my patients. I would have conversations with patients who would, confide in me some of the deepest things that they had in it. And many times it would mirror what I went through. And then I just found myself hyperventilating and sobbing in front of my patients. So knew I had to do something. And so without going into the details of how I came to the point where wrote it, the book, I will tell you that there were one huge thing that I realized that made me feel like I needed to write. And that was, I realized that of all the people in the whole world, there was only one other person who knew my story, and that was my abuser.
Mm.
And I thought, oh no, I am not going to let him have the narrative of my life. If there was something to happen to me, then whatever he said would be what my life was. And I realized that I had lived my life. Half of it was in complete darkness. And I felt invisible. So I thought, I've got to write this so that other people will be witness to what I went through, that my life will be validated, and actually, that I could say that I lived for something. So the second reason I decided to publish was I felt like something good had to come of this after 33 years of hell. And then another, to this point before I published it, 11 years of being silent about it. I mean, how can anybody, I felt like I'm a good person. How does something so bad happen to a good person? Something good has to come of this. There are people who go to prison for worse things and they're out before I let myself out of this prison. And I felt like, at least if I could do this, maybe I can help others. So I wanted to have my life witnessed, and I want to make sure that I help others. And those are the two main reasons why I decided to write and publish the book.
Well, we throw the word narcissist around quite a bit these days. Explain for our viewers what that looks like in a relationship and what it's like being on the receiving end of that kind of treatment.
Well, as I understand, because I'm not an expert on this, but as I understand, a narcissist, there's a lot of different categories in that narcissist, but essentially, as a narcissist, they want the world to basically revolve around them. Now, there's different types of narcissists that can manipulate the world to revolve around them in different ways. What I have come to believe is that my kid's dad is a covert narcissist. And this is as I have read, one of the worst types of narcissists out there, because they are what they call the wolf in sheep's clothing to everybody else in
Yeah.
the world. They are this wonderful, great person. They're helpful to anybody who needs help. They want to put on a good face, but when they come in behind closed doors, they are totally different. And it always starts out with just the little slights, and they always try to paint themselves as the victim. And so, for somebody who has a good heart, like me, always wanting to give people the benefit of the doubt, always wanting to look for the best in people,
Mhm.
I felt this deep need through my programming growing up that I needed to maybe fix people. And so here was somebody who came across as, the world is treating me bad, and I'm always on the bad end of everything, and you should feel sorry for me. So they're always painting their life as being that they're on the fuzzy end, as they would say, of the lollipop. And so you're trying to help them, and you don't realize that you're getting emotionally sucked in to what they want, and that is fuel for their ego. Oh, look, I've got people who are giving me attention, even though I am posing myself as a victim, and oh, woe is me. Doesn't matter, they like the attention. And it's a twisted form of narcissist. But when they leave you and they go out into the world, they just pretend to be this great person. When they come home to you, then they cry about how their life was so miserable that day and nobody loves them. And they challenge you to prove over and over again how you must love them. And they put you in double binds that it doesn't matter what choice or what option or what answer you give them. Either answer, either choice is going to always be wrong. And it doesn't matter to them, because that gives them fuel that they can then say, you see, I'm always the victim. You see, you did it to me. It was because of me. And it's this horrible circular dive that you drive into this deep darkness that you're trying to always try to help them become better and fix them. And you never can. And in the meanwhile, you just become depleted. And I read something somewhere and I put it in my book, that people like me, we are the givers that are always giving, and people like them are the takers that always take. And they just take and take until you've got nothing else left to give.
What a horrible existence. How did you manage to make life look normal? You had regular jobs, a dental hygienist, teacher, coach. How did you keep your private life private? How did you
Like,
look
not show the
normal?
world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, you know, it's interesting how your brain works when you're in survival mode. And it's not until after I got out that I started really, really understanding that there's a big protection in that you start pushing things in boxes and putting them away. First of all, have to make sure you understand. Big part of what happened is in your brain is you can't not reconcile the two different people in front of you. One, he was this great, wonderful, loving person that I met in the beginning. How then could he be this cruel and just dismissive and discarding person on the other end? And so your brain is having a hard time reconciling the two. And so what do? What is that you make excuses for the bad behavior, because that's the only way to explain it. You
Yeah.
make excuses away. And so when you go out into the world, you've already somewhat have made excuses and put those little excuses in boxes somewhere deep down into your brain. And then you just go out and you perform and you pretend. But as the years go on, it's harder to keep making those excuses. Eventually, when you just get beaten down, you start seeing the reality that they have been manipulating you all along. And it's just an absolutely cruel, cruel, dark, twisted thing. Yeah, that happens.
Having gone through all that, how difficult was it to write such an honest, transparent book?
Yeah, well, it was extremely difficult. Though when I started having those triggers and little flashes of memory of those little traumatic episodes that would come back, that was hard enough. So for me to have to dig deep, I was having to not just look at a memory, but I was having to look at a movie of my life, and
Yeah,
I
to
was
relive
having
it.
to Exactly. I had to dissect frame by frame and go back. And it was really hard. And I would have to get up, and I'm still kind of tearing up right now at it. I would have to get up and walk away because it was just so hard. But I had a lot of questions for myself. And as victims, you blame yourself for getting into these relationships. How could you have been so stupid? Why didn't you see the
Yeah.
red flags?
Yeah.
And so part of what I had to do was dig deep, go back through so I can find out and understand how did I let this happen to me. And so I forced myself to have to go back in there. And I really, Paul, I had no choice. I was dying that if I did not figure this out, I didn't know what was going to happen to me because I was really living a dark life at that time. So it was hard, but through it, I discovered some watershed things that helped relieve the guilt from me and help understand, put everything into perspective, that I truly was the victim and he was truly the abuser.
What's the message to people who are going through that right now?
Oh gosh,
I mean,
it is
yeah,
so, yeah. There's so many layers and there's so
yeah.
many messages that could be given out there. First of all, I guess I would say if you were in it, I know how hard it is to get out. And one of the worst things people could say is, why didn't you just leave? People who've never been through this kind of abuse have no idea that it is not something that you just say, I've had enough and I'm going to leave. And there's many reasons why, but a big part of it is fear. And I didn't quite understand that until I got out and actually started writing the book and was doing research. And I was shocked to find out that 75% of all the victims who eventually escape their abuser are still killed by their abuser. That to me is an annihilation. But
Oh,
it also, at the same time, it validated to me one of the reasons why I felt like I couldn't leave because I had a real fear that he would kill me. If you don't have a complete plan, if you don't have a foolproof plan that you can get away without them knowing, totally surgical and get away, and if there was a chance that they would find out or come back, then you knew that it was going to be worse and you may not make it through it. You might be killed. And I had a real fear, especially when I had to wrestle twice. I had to wrestle a gun away from him 2 times in my marriage. I knew what could happen. But reading that statistic validated that fear. So for those of you who are out there going through this right now, I understand if you are stuck and you don't know how to get out, I understand about the fear. And I'll tell you one thing that my dad said that helped me so much because he caught a glimmer that maybe something was wrong about 10 years before I left. And he said, Pam, if you decide to leave, I'll support you.
mhm,
But if you decide to stay, I'll support you because no one is walking this walk but you. So
right.
for those of you who are out there, understand that. I understand that if whatever decision you make, you're making the best decision you can make for yourself at that time, given all the information that you have. And most likely you are living this alone because you don't know who to trust. So don't judge yourself.
Are you still afraid? Is he still around?
He, let me just say that could he do something? Absolutely, because he is still unhinged. He carries a loaded gun with him in his car because I guess this state allows him to. Um, but I figure if he does something to me, everybody will know who it was. So,
Well,
I can't,
that's one way to look
you
at
know,
it.
I yeah, I can't stop living my life.
Right.
And I already lived, 33 years of being with him, and then the last 11 years of living in darkness. It really wasn't until this book was released about, 2 weeks ago, that anybody knew what was going on. My children didn't even know. They didn't
Mhm.
even know the story. So they're reading it for the first time and they're having to come to terms with it. My dear handsome man, who is my partner and blessing from the universe from everything I went through, he didn't even know everything I went through because it was too heavy to share with people. And you got to be careful. That's the other thing too, is you don't know what other people have been through. You
Yeah.
don't know by relieving your energy that it might trigger somebody else. And so you have to be careful. Yeah. So,
One last thing. What would you say to the narcissists out there? Because they're out there and they think they're right.
well, you know what? There's nothing you can say to them because here's the thing I realize and recognize is that the only way that you are as a person, if you do wrong to somebody, you have to be able to reflect and self-reflect and know that what you did was wrong and why you did was wrong, and you got to want to change, and they can't do that. They're not capable of that, so they're not going to even care to even read my book. They don't care. What do I care? They don't care.
Yeah, because they're always
So
right.
they're always right. It's like they justify it all. Now I will say this: he knew exactly what he was doing. That was another watershed for me because I gave him a lot of allowances thinking it was this reason or that reason. And one of it was, I thought it was untreated depression until I realized if it really was his depression, he would have treated everybody the same way, but he didn't. He
No.
waited until no one was around. So what he did was intentional. And that told me he knew what he was doing. He knew that it was not socially acceptable, that he would be condemned, but he would still justify it.
Yeah.
That's what narcissists do. But they
Yeah.
just know that, well, I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be appreciated if people know about it, but they still do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Folks, if you want to read more, and I think you should, it's called The Big Dark. It's available on Amazon. Pamela, thanks so much for being with us today. It was great to visit with you, and good luck.
You know what, Paul, thank you so much. And I want to say real quick to any of you out there who feel like you might be triggered from reading this book, I understand. But if you still have the courage to go through and read it, then I am giving you many blessings because hopefully those triggers are what going to tell you what things that you still haven't resolved with yourself. So blessings to all of you. Live with love. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pam. And
Yes,
thank
sir.
you all out there for spending a few minutes with us on the Global Book Network. I'm Paul Ryden. We'll see you next time.